Well, guys, we've got the opportunity to talk a little bit about some areas where ministry life and family life come together, relate, and interact. And so I thought it might be good for us to just very briefly, each one of us, talk about our family life situation. I'll start with that. Beverly and I have been married 27 years. We have 3 children. Our oldest, Abigail's 23 now. Madeline's 22. Graham's 21. And so we packed them in tight, but that's where we are with our family. Vermon, tell us where you are with your parenting.
Well, Danae and I, we've been married 9 years. I have a 14-year-old son, Marcel, a 11-year-old daughter, Maya, a 6-year-old son, Judah, and a 2-year-old named Giovanna, daughter.
Yeah. So 14 to 2.
Yes.
Yeah. Ryan, where are you guys?
Well, we're more packed in like you are. We have 3 girls and a boy in that order. We have Autumn at 17, Caitlin at 16, Jillian at 14, and William at 12.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So all of us in slightly different seasons, but all of us facing the same basic questions, same issue that many people in ministry will face, and that's how do we shepherd our families? How do we care for our wives, but particularly thinking of our children as well as we go through kind of choppy waters in ministry, when there's turmoil in ministry. So Ryan, you've probably been doing this
17-ish.
17 years. Why don't you talk about a little bit about, as you face turmoil in ministry, what does shepherding of your children and your wife look like during times that are rough?
Yeah, it's a very important question. I think for starters, for me, it means acknowledging the fact that this is a season of turmoil, being aware of that fact, being aware that I am going to have more of a tendency to be distracted at home, or my heart to be heavy. I need to be aware of that. Of course, that's a temptation in any season of ministry, whether it's a great joyful season and successful season in a sense, with God's blessing and a lot to do, but even more so I think with turmoil. So being aware, talking to my wife about that, and yet also being aware of what is unnecessary to tell her, what is unhelpful. Not every family and every marriage relationship will look the same, I think, as far as what a wife wants to hear and can bear, but being aware of that, I think, is probably the key, at least for the start.
Yeah. And you've been in ministry 17 years.
I've been a preaching pastor for almost 17.
17 years. Yeah. Vermon, you're a little younger in the ministry, 11 years now,
Yep.
down at the church in Phoenix, and yet I'm sure, 11 years is enough time to have experienced some choppy waters. So you want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the things in your heart regarding how to care for your family?
Well, I just appreciate the question itself, which is really saying that we should pay attention to our families, the need to shepherd our families through choppy waters. As you said, it can be very easy to become very focused on the concerns and the needs and the trials that you're going through, and forget that your family is also being affected by it, especially to the degree in which, especially depending on, I think, the issue that's going on. And then related to that, though, then is just the need then to be intentional about how you shepherd your family, and realizing, so sometimes I always like to say, my kids are always listening. Yeah. And so whether there's things I am talking to my wife about, or maybe it's another pastor and I have one of my kids around, it can be very easy for me to sort of forget that, well, wait a second, they're involved as well, and they're paying attention, they're watching. And that really relates to, I think, how some practical things that I think through in terms of just being aware to the degree in which I am depending on the Lord through these trials. My kids are also noticing that and realizing, okay, this is what Dad does when there's trouble.
Right.
And I think that's really important for them to see.
Yeah, it's a great gospel opportunity, isn't it? You don't want to be naive or cliche about that, but hard things are opportunities for us to kind of strengthen our own hearts and our families' hearts in the gospel of God's grace. And I think what we're all saying is we don't want our families to be unaware that ministry is challenging and that there's hard times. But do you guys feel the same thing that I feel? I want to protect, I want to jealously protect, for my children especially, a sense of warmth and a sense of high regard for the church. And so somehow we've got to manage this, acknowledging the reality and yet preserving for them, not pure innocence, but a sense of we still love the church.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
You guys have thoughts on that?
I'm sure I failed in that, but I sure want that, and
Yeah.
I want my kids to grow up thinking that Dad loves the church,
Right.
and loves that church,
Exactly.
and those people,
These people,
and
yeah.
these leaders that
Yeah.
he serves with. Yeah, I hope they go away with that from our home. I think it's also important to protect the home. So while we want to be honest, boy, there's such a balance that's needed here. We want to be honest. We want them to see parents suffer well and deal with it and give things to the Lord. But we also want our home to be a solace for our kids. We want warmth and a feeling of safety to be the norm. And so it takes some wisdom, I think, from God to know when to talk, when not to.
Right. Yeah. And there's things that you'll share with your 20-year-old that
Right.
you might not share with your 13-year-old, and you would never share with your 7-year-old.
That's right.
So it requires wisdom and virtue in the moment.
Age-appropriate ways.
Yeah, yeah. So
You know, it's also helpful, I think, just a good reminder that it's the Lord's church, right? So my name isn't on the front. It's the Lord's church. It's His bride, and He's purifying her and going to one day make her without blemish or spot or wrinkle. So we're not surprised things come up. But it helps then, I think, it helps my kids, helps our family to have a love for the church and saying that the Lord loves our church, and He's guiding us. It's not an attack on exactly. It's in His hands. It's not an attack on us or any other leaders that they like and care about. This is something that we can trust the Lord and walk through together. And all that, again, I think is a great example to our kids of how you go through trial.
exactly, for our children to be able to see in us, again, not perfectly, but to see a faithful kind of walking through a hard time that still trusts God,
Yeah.
still rejoices in God. I mean, if all of a sudden we're reading from the imprecatory Psalms for family devotions, and our kids know who we're talking about when we read, God's enemies, something's
Are you speaking from
No.
experience?
Something's gone wrong there, right? I mean, here's a situation where we are particularly prone. It's a ripe situation for us sinning, and we want our children to see their fathers, again, not perfectly, their mothers, again, not perfectly, but faithfully demonstrating godliness under fire.
Yeah. I just think of my own life, some of the trials my mother went through. And I think often, why am I Christian? It's the Lord's grace. But I think particularly the Lord's grace as shown by my mom's faithfulness through different trials that our family went through. And I remember consciously thinking as a child, what's going to happen? What's my mom going to do? And I remember clearly my mom saying, well, nothing's changed. Like, we're still going to church. We're still praying at night. Jesus is still good. The Lord is still good. He'll take care of us. And that was a sealing moment for my faith, was saying, okay, we're not just saying these things just to say them. Yeah. Like, this is what we can build our lives on. This is what I want to build my life on. Yeah. So I just think about that in my own life, and just thinking just a microcosm of a family and seeing my mom and how she went through different things. I think that certainly applies when we think for ourselves and as we're ministering to our family in the context of this larger body, the church. Those moments are incredibly important.
Right, so nothing gets wasted in God's economy. He'll put this to use, and our trust in God's sovereign grace in this is the key. Great, yeah.